Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein's pattern of sexual harassment and payoffs, which led to his ouster, has been dominating the headlines all week. And after similar allegations about Bill O'Reilly, Roger Ailes, Bill Cosby, some say this could prove a tipping point for awareness of office gender politics. But could there be unintended consequences that paradoxically make it more difficult for women in the workplace? This piece by Claire Kane Miller in the Upshot column of the New York Times caught my eye. Unintended consequences of sexual harassment scandals. And it reported, quote, in Silicon Valley, some male investors have declined one-on-one meetings with women or rescheduled them from restaurants to conference rooms. On Wall Street, certain senior men have tried to avoid closed-door meetings with junior women. It sounds like, with men trying to avoid these situations, women could find themselves with fewer opportunities to earn advancement and enjoy equal status. What can we do about this? Joining me now is Ripa Rashid, co-president of the Center for Talent Innovation. She's been a management consultant for many firms, including Time Warner. Ripa, do you buy into this, that one of the unintended consequences might be this chilling effect on the workplace?
Michael, sadly, yes. That's the reality of it. It was bad enough to start off with. Some of the data we've tracked over the years shows that 64% of senior men avoid one-on-one contact with women to start off with because they're afraid of sexual innuendo. And so obviously this is going to make it much worse, not just for the men, but for the women too. 50% of the women in our studies avoid one-on-one contact with senior men. For that very reason, because people are going to think. I myself have had experiences working all over the world as a management consultant where when I've been, having a drink with a senior colleague coming back to the hotel, and people have thought I'm an escort. I mean, this is the reality. Women are still sexualized in the workplace. And until we're seen as equal thinkers, innovators, creators, when we're still primarily seen as sexual beings still, it's going to continue and it's going to make it worse.
I was about to say, so give me a scenario that comes to mind, but you just did, quite a scenario. So in the traveling scenario, for two business colleagues, two men to have a drink at the end of the day, no big deal. They establish some camaraderie. It spills over into the workplace. But if it's a man and a woman, all of a sudden it's, how are we being perceived? And is someone going to think I'm the new Harvey Weinstein of my Fortune 500 company?
Precisely. And, I think it's even worse when it's a woman of color. So I don't know if you want to go down that path, but there's a race component to it.
How so?
Too. I don't know if I'd been a white woman in those instances because I was in Mexico, I was in Singapore when these incidents happened. So I was often assumed to be a local person, and I was with a Caucasian male boss because I was working for an American company. So, there's a race component to it that makes it worse. But the upshot here is that it's always been tough, and could go one in two directions, right? It could go in the direction of making it safer because we have more vigilance, and smart companies are going to seize upon this to make environments where you can create transparency, you can create safety, you can create a lot of dialogue around this and stop sexualizing women.
So if you and I were colleagues, we're not having that drink and we're not going to share a meal. Instead, we're going to be meeting in the fishbowl inside the office. That hardly seems like a solution.
That is not necessarily the solution. And, it's twofold. It's one, that you create environments where, maybe there are designated restaurants people go to, and people know that you and I are colleagues and working on a project together. That's probably it. They know that for years you and I have been working together, and you believe in me, and I believe in you, and together we're going to create something good. So that's what we call this dynamic of sponsorship. And, I think the worst outcome of what's going on right now in America could be the negative fallout you very rightly point out.
It seems to me that it extends not just from upper management positions, like some of the scenarios you may have been describing, but all the way down to the summer internship program, where now, instead of mentoring and providing some level of tutoring for a person who's still in college or in graduate school, you're going to have some male in upper management think, maybe I best not spend too much time with her.
You know what? You can focus on that, and maybe that's going to happen. There are ways you can ward against that. You can create group-based mentoring and sponsorship between men and women. Right. Because the reality is women are going to need to be mentored by Men, because that's who still holds power, right? 95% of Fortune 500 CEOs are men. I mean, they're white men. So you are going to need to have access to them to have power. The way is, how do you desexualize it? And the other thing that's been pointed out in the press is that there's a generational difference. I mean, for every Harvey Weinstein, there is a Judd Apatow who's done it right with Alina Dunham, right? So we need to showcase the men who are doing it right.
Okay, bottom line is, it would be a horrible aftermath of this scandal if there were now less opportunities for women in the workplace because of his bad behavior.
Absolutely. And I think we see this as an opportunity to break the silence. What has happened? What has happened is that there's been this incredible silence around all of the egregious behaviors that have been going on over the years. And because, why have we been silent? Fear of retaliation, fear of those doors of opportunities closing up to us. That's not good enough. Men cannot abdicate their responsibility here to continue to sponsor the best and the brightest, no matter what they are, regardless of gender, regardless of sexuality. Men cannot abdicate their responsibilities to creating a better workplace. Because you know what? We're going to go to workplaces where we aren't harassed.
Ripa Rashid, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your expertise.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
My Twitter page is hot. Let's see what you've got. Smerconish, instead of looking at the behavior, men will use the highlight on sexual harassment to shy away from hiring women. I mean, Heather, and I see that you're an attorney, that's another potential downside. Geez, she's really competent, and I'd like to hire her, but somebody's going to think that we're carrying on in a way that we shouldn't. Maybe instead I'll hire him. That would be another bad Weinstein outcome. One more if we have time for it. They don't know when telling a woman she looks nice could become sexual harassment, says Elizabeth. I mean, I think that some things that are completely innocent and perhaps complimentary will as well be reined in as a result of this. And that's not a good thing either. Still to come, how can marketers sell things like mops and washing machines to millennials if they don't know how to use them? By teaching them the basics, and I will explain. And when the president decertified the Iran nuclear deal and cut off subsidies to Obamacare, was he just making good on campaign promises or trying to erase the legacy of Barack Obama? I will ask former Obama advisor David Axelrod.